Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my humble home in Livingston, Montana. Okay, it's Monday, the 28th of September of 2020. What does that mean? Absolutely nothing. It just gives me a bearing of where I'm at, basically speaking. Okay, it's storytelling time. Now look, ladies and gentlemen, I have no idea if people enjoy these ridiculous, stupid little stories I tell, but I just do it because maybe I can get a chuckle out of somebody. Maybe. I don't know. Okay. This particular incident happened when I used to live down in southern Idaho. That's where I met my wife, and that's where my kids were all born. They were all born in a place called Burley, Idaho. Okay. I had a few other relatives that migrated down there. I had a first cousin of mine that lived down there. And I do believe that this particular incident I'm going to relay on to you folks happened in 1976 or 77, one of the two. You don't have to forgive me. I'm getting old, okay? But I remember I had a fairly new Blazer. I had it wasn't real new, but new enough. It was a 1975 Blazer, so I'll give you an idea. But of course, back in them days, I was a stump jumper. I was a hot rodder. I was a mud crawler. I done everything except for flip the thing backwards, and I would have done that if I thought I could get away with it. Okay. I had this first cousin of mine, and this dude, was one of these house people. You know what I'm talking about? Definitely not an outdoorsman. Definitely didn't want much to do with hunting or fishing, or nothing like that. And I didn't really particularly care for that because I was into that stuff, especially when I was younger. I did a lot of hunting and fishing. Okay. On this one in particular day, I wasn't working, and neither was this fool, this cousin of mine. Matter of fact, this guy didn't work very much at all. He probably worked more, with the bud dumper than anything. But anyway, we decide that we want to go out on a place called the Kaimana Desert. And if you folks would look at Google Maps and look right down the highway, down through Pocatello and American Falls and Burley, Idaho and Twin Falls. But, right directly north of Burley, Idaho is a place called the Kaimana Desert. It's a pretty big desert out there, as far as desert goes. It's not like Death Valley or nothing like that. It's a typical high plains desert with sagebrush that's 10 feet high. I kid you not. That desert, that Kaimana Desert's probably, I want to say probably just to get through this story, about 75 miles square, okay? Okay, this cousin of mine and I decided that we're going to go out stump jumping, if you will. Well, there wasn't too many stumps out there, a lot of sagebrush and stuff. Now, this was in March of the year, and it was right after winter time, and everything was all wet and muddy, and there was big mud holes on that road that went straight north of what they call Burley, Idaho, Paul, Idaho. If you just look on the maps, you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, we get way the heck out there to a place called Baseline Road, which is about 15 or 20 miles from Burley, Idaho, okay? And we just kept going straight because, you could, there's roads wandering all over through that Kaimana Desert country, All right, we're trucking along, and every once in a while I'd come up to a great big mud puddle. I mean, one that was like 15, 20 feet wide and say maybe 18 inches deep and, say 50, 100 feet long, like that. And boy, I'd go, yahoo, and I've got that Blazer in four-wheel drive, and I go tearing through that mud holes, and mud and water splashing all over the place and all that kind of stuff. And that goopy cousin of mine was sitting to the right of me, naturally. He might as well, the way he was carrying on, he might as well have been sitting in my lap, because, you know, he was sitting shotgun side is what I'm saying. He kept, every time I'd come up to one of them big bog holes, he'd go, no, Jim, don't go through that. You're scaring the hell out of me. And I said, look here, fool. I said, grab a hold here. Get a hold of yourself. I said, there ain't nothing going to happen here. And, you know, I said, this is good, tough four-wheel drive. You know, I was young and stupid back in them days and thought my Blazer was invincible and all of that stuff. Now I can't stand Chevy products, but that's neither here nor there. And so I kept doing that. You know, every so often we'd come up to like I say, a big mud hole, 15, 20 feet wide, couple of feet deep, you know, 100 feet long or whatever have you. And I just go tearing through there and water going all over the place, mud, all that kind of stuff. And boy, we're grinding through all this stuff. And that cousin of mine, he's sitting over there just, you know, pretty much pooping his pants. You know, I hate to be this blunt on YouTube, but I just have to. Actually, I'm hoping to tick somebody off. I'm just kidding. But anyway, I could tell, you know, I kept looking over at this fool, and he had his hand on the door, you know, on the door, you know, to open it up. And, you know, and I looked at him and I said, what are you going to do there, fool? Jump out? And he goes, yeah, I'm thinking about doing that very thing. You're scaring the crap out of me. You know, and all this other stuff. I mean, this guy was really having a conniption fit because he thought we were going to get stuck. Well, when you're in that kind of country and you've got water on the road, it generally means that the bottom of the road is hard. You never go out into that high plains desert country and get off the road, or you're going to get stuck for sure. I guarantee you, because by the time I get done with this story, you'll understand. All right, quickly moving on here. I went through another mud puddle, and I could see that this cousin of mine was getting real serious. He'd actually opened up the door, and I knew this fool well up. You know, like I say, he wasn't much of an outdoorsman. He, you know, addicted to TV, liked to drink a lot, all that kind of stuff, you know. Definitely definitely not somebody that I considered, even though he was family, somebody that I definitely didn't consider my hunting partner. He just didn't have it in him, okay? And he tells me flat out, he says, Jim, you go through one more of those mud holes, and I'm going to jump out for sure. And I knew that this coward, this fool, would do that very thing. He wouldn't have cared if it was in the middle of a mud hole or what. So we come up to this pretty substantially big mud hole. This mud puddle, if you will, a mud hole. And so I said, and he goes, okay, I'm jumping out. And I said, okay, fool, I'll go around. So I turned to my left and went out through the sagebrush. The sagebrush was kind of short right there. And tried to maneuver my way around that mud puddle, if you will. And the next thing you know, I sunk right to both axles. I mean, I got myself buried, stuck. You know, I don't know what others. I definitely wasn't going anywhere. And the hell of it was, I never had a shovel with me, I never had any chains with me or anything, but it didn't really matter because it was so marshy and mucky out there off in the main road and all that basically I just sunk right to my axles, and the only thing I could find was a board about like this and about that long, just an old board laying out there in the desert, and I tried to dig myself out with that board. Well, you folks can imagine how that worked. It didn't work too good. and all that other stuff. As a matter of fact, I told my cousin, I said, get to digging over there. Then he says, oh, I don't have anything to dig with. And I said, dig with your hands. Dig with something. We got to dig ourselves out of here, because after all, you fool are the one that got me in this mess. We wouldn't even be here if you weren't such a coward. I basically had to, give it to him with both barrels. Well, no matter what I did, I could not free that 1975 Blazer. I mean, it was stuck right to the frame. Front end, rear end, everything, right to the frame. And when you get like that, you're stuck. So, finally my cousin looks at me and he says, well, what are we going to do, Jim? And I says, I looked at him and I says, Soul Express. And he looked and he says, Soul Express? What do you mean? I said, kicking rocks, bro, kicking rocks. We're going to have to walk out of here. And it really was, even though it was in the spring of the year, it was kind of overcast. It was a little bit coolish, but that country down there gets hotter than a popcorn, gas. It really does, in the middle of summer. But this was spring, and it was still relatively cool, but definitely not hot. But definitely, it almost looked like it wanted to snow. I remember that all too well. And so this cousin of mine, he goes, I'm going to freeze to death. I don't have the right clothing. So I grabbed a blanket. I had a blanket in the back of that Blazer. And I threw this blanket around him, and he looked like a fellow Indian. Now, I'm not making fun of the Indians and North American Indians or nothing, but with this blanket around him, well, he looked like a fool is what he looked like. And he's standing there on the road, on the dry part of the road. He goes, after questioning me and freaking out and everything, he goes, this is the crux of the story. He goes, he said, I don't know if he said I or we or something, but I think he said we. He says, we're going to die out here, because we were quite a ways out there on that Kamima Road, past that baseline road. We were out there. We were probably 10 miles from the nearest ranch or farmhouse, easy, about 10 miles. And there's my cousin. He goes, we're going to die out here. I mean, that's just what he... We're going to die out here. And I looked at this fool, and I said, I tell you what, this is how this story's going to go. The only thing that you're going to die from is my boot and your rear end. I said, you understand, pal? My boot and your rear end. That's going to be your demise if you don't start kicking rocks and get on the Soul Express, because there's only one thing that we can do, and that's walk out of here. And of course he looks at me and he goes, you're a redneck. I said, I don't care. We've only got one choice. What are you going to do? Grow, feathers and fly out of here? So anyway, this cousin of mine, he resolves himself to the fact that we got to walk out of there. We got to walk about 10 miles, which is what we did. We bootlegged, it didn't take, come on, 10 miles, guys. What? The average human being can walk about 5 to 7 miles an hour if you need help at all. So it took us a couple hours, but we finally came and got to the nearest farmhouse, and thank God there was somebody home. There was just the farm lady was home and her 16-year-old son. And I remember her son all too well, because his arm was in a cast because he broke his arm. But we come banging on the door and everything, and she opened up the door, and I explained our situation, that we were buried way out in the desert. And she goes, oh, come on in here. Here, can I give you some coffee? And, of course, that cousin of mine, boy, he bellied up to the couch and had the old blanket on him like he was dying and guzzling her coffee and all that kind of stuff. And I says, I said, ma'am, is there any way that, I said, do you have a tractor that I can borrow or anything? She says, oh, sure. She says, I'll get my son there. Even though he's got a broken arm, he can drive my husband's big tractor and like that. And so we got a few chains. I remember this young buck, he was a real nice young fella, we got he probably got about 50 foot of chain, because I told him I was really buried. And I told my cousin, I said, okay. I said, come on. I said, let's go. And he goes, oh, no. I said, I'll wait for you here. He's sitting there with his cup of coffee pretending I know dang well he wasn't that cold. I just knew he wasn't that cold. So me and this young fella, we just jumped on his tractor and away we went out to where my Blazer was. And, and of course, I had mud all over me. I had mud clear up to my crotch and everything. But I got out there and hooked up that tractor and hooked up my Blazer and everything and got it started, put it in reverse, and the young buck jerked me out of there. And I mean, this Blazer was covered with mud. I mean, just covered. But anyway, we put away the chains and, he took off, back to the old farmhouse, and I took off and went to the farmhouse and picked up my cousin. And I looked at him, I said, you still think we're going to die there, fool? And of course, he's a redneck, like it's all my fault. He's the one that was going to bail ship because I was running through mud puddles. But back in those days, I had a kind of a short fuse on me, and I really was fixing to put a boot in his rear end. I was fixing to put a boot in his other mouth. That's the end of the story, ladies and gentlemen, except for the fact that we drove back to Burley, Idaho, and I had to hit every car wash to clean this doggone thing. I mean, I really did have to put $5. That was a lot of money back in the days to be able to even see the original paint. I mean, this thing was covered from mud from top to bottom, but, we made it out of there anyway, and nobody died. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for visiting me here in Livingston, Montana. That's the end of my story. Like I am always famous or infamous for saying, take care of yourselves. We shall see you on down the trail. And adios, my friends. And where's the stop button? Goodbye.